In today's video, I'm going to be removing the rear panel section from my 2008 Smart Fortwo 451. There are many reasons why you may wish to remove the rear panels from your Smart Fortwo. In my case, I need to access the rear exhaust silencer in order to replace a lambda probe. Now you can remove the entire side skirt, or alternatively you can just release these two fixings, unclip it from here, and you can pull it back far enough to access two small screws. You may prefer to remove the whole panel. This was only off last week, so if it comes to it, it's not an issue to take that off again. Begin by removing these. Revealing two screws. These are Torx screws and they're T25. Repeat the same on the other side. In the centre of the rear panel there is another T25 bolt. This must be undone. There are two bolts lower down either side which must also be removed. Under the car there are two clips to detach, one each side, and just inside you have two further screws here and here. Undo and remove those. Plastic panel is push fitted into a slot along here, so this just needs to be lifted. There are a couple of considerations. The fuel filler housing comes away with this panel, so you will need to disconnect the solenoid which is inside here, and additionally the rear lights also come away with this panel, so you will need to disconnect the wiring for those. It's not essential, but it's helpful to remove the rear boot panel to save damaging it in the process of removing the rear panel. Just some bolts or screws here, one each side. There's also a line of 4 screws to undo here. The panel will drop down, so be ready. You will need to disconnect the wiring for the number plate lights. Easiest way is to push this little clip in and push the lamp units through. It's easier to deal with out here. It's a really good opportunity to change these bulbs, because if you ever needed to change them you'd have to take this panel off anyway, and I can see looking at these bulbs that they're quite blackened, so I'll be changing those before this all goes back together. Don't forget to unscrew the filler cap, as it would prevent this from passing over the filler neck. It's a good idea to plug this with something to prevent any debris going down it at this point. And disconnect this connector here for the solenoid for the fuel flap. Just disconnecting the connector block for the rear light unit. And the panel can come away. And the panels are off the car. It's a good opportunity to just check them. Maybe even give them a clean. If you wish to remove the rear light units, this hinges down, which allows it to be released from there, and the same on this side here. Keep them safe from damage and don't trip over them, as I invariably will. Now, as with my recent video on removing front panels when I replaced a suspension top mount, it's really good to get a general insight to the construction of the car and a really good opportunity to look at what lies beneath the plastic panels to be sure that it hasn't had an accident and that it hasn't sustained any damage. Everything's looking good. This cross panel here is considered sacrificial and should always be replaced if it's been damaged. It's designed to take initial small impacts and prevent damage to the tritium, but even that looks in good condition. The reason I've actually removed the rear panels is to access this lambda probe. I've got a fault code currently which would suggest there's a problem with this heater element in this lambda probe. It looks very seized. I'm going to be soaking that daily until the lambda probe arrives to give me the best chance of getting that out without pulling threads with it or whatever. So that's the lambda probe after the catalytic converter, which lives in this part of the exhaust system. I'll be cleaning all of this and it will be looking a lot better before I put this all back together. More to come in the video when I replace the lambda probe. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to remove the rear panel section on a Smart Fortwo 451. Once the lambda probe arrives, or oxygen sensor, whichever you want to call it, I'll be uploading another video on that little job. Hopefully it's not too seized. Do feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.